Hi everyone, Adam here. So today's topic is one that I just got a huge email about, and it's a topic that there's not a clear consensus on in terms of exactly what's going on. But the question is maintaining strength and muscle. So typically when you're training, obviously you're building, you're getting better. But what happens when you stop training? Well, usually after a set period of time, you start losing the qualities that you've trained. That can include strength, that can include muscle, that can include endurance. Now, I'll say that personally, I have more experience, of course, with strength and muscle, but I kind of believe that endurance probably works similarly. Again, that's not necessarily a certainty, but this is kind of the way, at the very least, strength and muscle tends to work. There have been studies that showed that just one one full body workout per week in, elderly exercisers was enough to basically maintain their level of fitness. Just one workout per week. Which is to say that, if you think about that, that sounds pretty crazy, right? Because if you're training 4, 5, 6 days a week to get better, and then you could just do one day a week just to maintain that, that sounds like a pretty sweet deal. It's definitely a lot less work. And, yeah, everybody wants to be the best, everyone wants to be constantly getting better, but at a certain point, if that were the entirety of the picture, you could just say, you know what, I'm good now, and you could just stay that way for the rest of your life with one workout a week, which seems absurd, right? So there's been, again, there's been a lot more going on since then, of course. There's a really good article by Bret Contreras entitled "How Low Can You Go?" And basically it details his own experiment with maintenance, in which he slowly cut out, basically work progressively to see at what point he would start dropping, muscle and strength. And he got pretty low. I think it was just 2 days per week was enough. And he was, someone who is moderately well trained, someone who is pretty significantly trained, not just, an elderly exerciser maintaining a base level of fitness. And he said, one day a week, I believe, was what caused him to, start seeing, decreases. But otherwise, again, 2 days per week is still, it's still practically nothing compared to the 4, 5, 6 days a week that most people would, be training to improve. Now, I think it's also certainly a huge factor is, how trained you are, how experienced you are. If you take a beginner, chances are that I think that they're going to lose strength and muscle faster than an expert who's been doing this for years, who takes, a couple weeks off because of an injury or because of something like that, and then they're able to jump back into it relatively quickly. It's also important to understand that as you get more advanced, you build satellite cells. These satellite cells are not lost as quickly as the muscle that you lose, so it's possible to rebuild muscle more quickly after doing it the first time. This is what we call kind of muscle memory. That's kind of the mechanism, one of the mechanisms by which it works. Essentially, when you've been training for a long time, you take some time off, you will see that you can jump back into things much quicker, see much more rapid advancement than, again, you did the first time. It's easier to build something the second time than the first time. So, it shouldn't even be a worry for some people, because, again, they can theoretically just, even if they go a week or two without training, they can put that back on. And so they can actually strategically use that as, kind of a deload, or, as some other, maybe to focus on some other kind of training, while they are, while they're deloading from the strength. And then they can, again, build that back up relatively quickly. The general rule of thumb that has been passed around, that we see cited the most, is about 1/3 to 1/2 of the building volume. So basically, like I said, Bret Contreras' example, 2 days per week training was enough for him to maintain. If he was training 4 days per week, somewhere between 4 and 6 days per week, that's again between 1/2 and 1/3 of the number of training days. Now, of course, it's hard to measure volume exactly. You could do it in exact poundage. That may or may not be accurate for you. The way I prefer to do it, the way Greg Nuckols prefers to do it, is to do it in terms of sets, sets used. So, if you were used to doing workouts where you do, 3 sets of something, you could just do 1 set, or maybe if you're doing 4 sets, you could do 2 sets. Um, there's ways, if you're strategically looking to maintain for some reason because you don't have the time or whatever, you can definitely maintain with a lot less effort than is required to build. And again, that's about 1/2 to 1/3 of the volume. Whether you measure that in training days, whether you measure that in sets of an exercise, there's different ways to do it. But yes, you do not need as much to maintain as to build, certainly. Now, basically the email that I got was a guy asking, hey, I feel like I lose quicker than other people. He was basically saying, I feel like if I don't go, if I go more than 2 or 3 days, I start losing stuff. Well, I mean, yes, that's certainly a possibility. It's certainly a possibility that you're an outlier, that you lose, stuff more quickly than other people. I'm not discounting that. I would also say that, realistically, when you look at, for example, myself, I remember way, way back in the day when I first started lifting, I felt like if I didn't go, if I went 2 days without lifting, I would feel like I was, all my muscle had vanished or something like that. And that was because I wasn't having that pump. That was because I wasn't having that active workout to basically keep me, big all the time, as it were. But again, the reality is that I wasn't losing muscle. I was just getting anxious and freaking out when I didn't have any real evidence that that was actually happening. And if you look at someone who's training for strength, you test your 1 rep max once a month or so. You don't need to test it constantly. I mean, yes, you can do a Bulgarian style program for kind of a peaking style program, and that can really give you extremely exact, extremely up to date, on all the tiny little changes in your strength that are going on. But the reality is that there are natural fluctuations from day to day, and also that chances are that you're not testing enough that you can actually see. If you go 2 or 3 days, it's not like you're doing a 1RM every 3 days, so it's not like you can tell whether or not your 1RM actually went down. So that's one of those cases where I think it's likely that you may be jumping the gun a little bit and saying that you think you're losing after just 2 days. But he says that also that it's definitely if he goes 5 days then he's losing, and I mean, I think that's more reasonable, certainly. If you go 5 days without training, that's close enough to a week that it kind of makes sense that you might be losing a little bit there. Implications for people. I mean, if you're an athlete and you are training for strength, and then you need to start training for endurance, or if you're training for one quality and you have to start training for another, it's ideal to do a maintenance level of training for that one quality while you're focusing on the other quality. Yeah, you may lose a little bit simply because, again, your body is focusing on training for the other thing instead. But that's going to be a lot better at maintaining that quality than simply just cutting that training entirely and letting it fall off. So I do think that maintenance can be strategically used within training cycles, again, to maintain one quality while building another. Now, that's kind of the way block periodization is designed. Block periodization is typically designed, if you know what block periodization is. If you don't, you can just skip over this. But block periodization is typically designed to sort of maintain qualities while building upon them in a strategic manner. So that's kind of the whole idea behind block periodization. Now, other implications. If you are someone who is busy, if you're someone who does not have a lot of time, if you just need to get if you just need to get a quick workout in, again, just 1 set of each, literally just 1 set of each exercise, is enough to maintain. So strategically, if you're someone who, you're like, oh man, it's the holidays, I'm going to be flying to visit my family, I'm not going to be able to go to the gym for 2 weeks, here's what you do. You strategically plan to do at least 1 workout, 1 or 2 workouts every week, make them quick, make them, maybe a little bit shorter, or again, just focus on the overall workouts. But again, just that little bit is enough to maintain, and that can be super. That can save you so much time in the long run. Like 1 week of maintenance can save you 2 weeks of building back up. So it's just dang useful no matter what. So That's it for today. As always, like, comment, share. Tell me what you want to see in future videos. I will talk to you guys next time. Have a good one.